Okay, welcome back to Reviews with Elaine, because I have opinions. Today's opinions will be about Scott Pilgrim, and not just the first one. I'm gonna do them all at once, because I am not doing this in depth enough to bother doing each book individually. So, Scott Pilgrim, I've known about this series for a while. Specifically, I've had several friends throughout my life who have been sort of obsessed with them, but I've also had several friends who frankly thought they were rather problematic comic books. And specifically, the complaints I've seen levied against these books are that they really lean heavily on the tropes of woman as prize and the manic pixie dream girl, like, oh, a magic girl appears to fix a guy's life. And having seen the movie, I really expected to agree with people. Like, I like the movie, but I like it mainly for the post-production stuff. I like the stylism. I like the way it's cut and edited. The actual story, I was frankly underwhelmed by it. Yeah, it is the story of a girl appearing out of nowhere to fix a guy's life. And cool, whatever. But that being said, I saw a YouTuber do a review about these comic books, and a lot of what he said about them made me actually a little bit more interested. He said that there's a lot more going on in the books than in the movie, and that, frankly, some of those tropes are slightly subverted. And I was like, okay, I'm willing to try them. And I liked them. They're fun. But firstly, Scott Pilgrim is the story of an absolutely driveless man-child who meets a girl named Ramona and falls immediately in love with her pretty much for no reason. He manages to convince her to go out with him, though he doesn't really deserve to, and only slightly is this complicated by the fact that he already has a girlfriend. A 17-year-old girl named Knives. And this is not great, because he's 23 years old. So this guy sort of sucks. He doesn't have a job, he doesn't have ambition, he doesn't have money. All he really has in his life is his band, which everyone agrees his band sucks. He also shares a one-room apartment with a guy named Wallace. They share a bed, and it seems Wallace pays for everything. In general, his friends seem to be completely taking care of himself, and they clearly think he's a moron. But it seems they care about him enough to do that, so there's the implication there must be more there. But when he meets Ramona, for the first time in, as far as we can tell, his entire life, he seems to actively want something and be willing to actually work to get something. But there's also a complication in dating Ramona, because Ramona has 7 evil exes that he's going to have to defeat to date her. And by the description, yeah, that sounds like the perfect setup of a manic pixie dream story where a girl just appears to fix the male lead. But there is more going on here. Ramona is actually a very rounded character. She is not just this quirky character that appears and fixes him. She is smart and sassy, she's weird and cool, but she's also cold and distant. She's uncommunicative and hypocritical. She comes with her own baggage, and more baggage than just 7 exes that become, you know, targets. No, she also, frankly, has, like, her own memories, her own tragedy, her own guilt, her own shit that she's dealing with. In fact, I would say this story is as much about Ramona sorting out her shit as Scott sorting out his. And in fact, the climax is only able to progress when Ramona finally basically addresses her own past and communicates with Scott. I would also be willing to argue that Ramona is not the reason that Scott sorts out his life. She just happens to be there at the time he's sorting his shit out. In fact, the volumes where Scott makes the biggest progress in becoming a real normal human being adult, when he gets a job, when he finally addresses his own traumatic memory problems, they are the volumes where Ramona is less present. Ramona does tell him to get a job, but so does every other character in the damn book. And when he finally does get a job, he gets it through Kim and Steven Stills, not Ramona. And on that note, also, like, Kim is the one who is there and prompts him to finally remember by fighting off the Negascot. But the point is, this is not the story of a perfect, quirky, like, basically cardboard cutout of a girl appearing to fix a male lead. It's a story of two very fucked up people trying to make a relationship work around some rather aggressive baggage. And I love stories of broken people finding each other. Especially stories where broken people come together because their broken parts match up, but they still have room to grow and become humans in their own right. And on that note, yeah, Scott and many other characters in this book are shitty human beings. They're really awful. Scott starts out the comic seeing absolutely nothing wrong with the fact that he lives his entire life mooching off his friends, is dating a minor, is pretty damn open about the fact that he's only in this relationship because he can't handle a real relationship, and he is fully incapable of remembering seemingly anything that does not directly impact him. Now, I want to make an important point here. The relationship with Knives, it's not as bad as it could have been. Like, objectively, he is an ass. He clearly doesn't care about her. And he seems to just be enjoying the fact that she sort of hero worships him, primarily because she's a 17-year-old girl and he's 23. But this is not a sexual relationship. He honestly treats her a little bit more like a kid sister than anything else. And when she kisses him, he visibly freaks out. I love this panel right here because you can see the existential terror on his face when he suddenly realizes there's a child kissing him. But yeah, he's still objectively an asshole. He lets her kiss him several more times before he finally breaks up with her, and he's dating Ramona this entire time. But on top of which, he breaks up with her right after she finally said she loves him. And then he completely ignores the fact that she is clearly crushed by this breakup. So yeah, he's an asshole. And he even tells all his friends that the reason he's dating this 17-year-old girl is because it's easy. It's simple. And why is it easy and simple? Because he has no emotional investment in it. So he is objectively using a 17-year-old girl to make himself feel better about himself. And I thought a lot about, like, why this relationship exists in this book, because it would be so easy to just make Knives, like, 18 and have it be less of a problem. But I think that is the point. This needs to be a relationship that anyone picking up this book at first glance goes, well, Scott's an asshole. It is in the book to show that he is really shitty. But the asshole behavior I find more interesting is actually the memory stuff, because Scott does not remember anything. He doesn't remember the majority of his high school years. He doesn't remember his college years. He doesn't remember whether or not he graduated college. He doesn't remember people's names, people's faces. He doesn't remember his own brother at one point. Like, he remembers nothing. And as the volumes go on, it becomes pretty clear that this is not just him being the most self-centered asshole in the known universe, and being so self-centered he's incapable of retaining details about anyone else. No, almost all these moments seem to stem from the fact that Scott is feeling guilt about those moments. Like, every time that he forgets something tends to be tied to something he fucked up in the past. He doesn't remember that he was an absolute ass to envy. He doesn't remember when he got shit-faced and made an ass of himself in front of all his friends. A lot of the people whose names he can't remember, it's explicitly stated that last time he met them, he did something rude or cruel or downright violent to them. And that being said, I honestly don't know why he forgot his brother. I don't know if I missed something, or if it was just a offhanded joke. Now, don't get me wrong, Scott is a self-centered asshole. A lot of the things he is visibly not paying attention to. He didn't notice when one of his friends came out because he was too busy dealing with his own shit. But the memory loss is clearly a choice of Scott's to put his mistakes behind him just by forgetting they ever happened. Also, these comic books are not in linear structure, and there are moments when I honestly wondered if I had a copy that was just like the pages had been misplaced, because memories are interspersed completely at random, often with no sign whatsoever we're jumping to a memory. They're often incomplete, and they're clearly edited, like bits are missing. Of course, this is clearly a choice by the author that honestly feels to me like it's making a very clear statement that the memory and the incompleteness of memory and the failures of memory are a major theme in the series. In the end, they are a big portion of what he has to confront to be able to win, to progress his life. And here's the weird thing about Scott Pilgrim. Even though he is undeniably a terrible human being, he's also really likable. And I think part of that is the character design. These giant cartoony eyes make the characters sort of cute. You want to like them. But also, I think part of it comes from the fact that Scott is surrounded by people who all seem to really like him. Or they're absolute bitches. Though some of them are absolute bitches and still really like Scott. Like, Wallace seems to pay for everything for this boy and doesn't seem to complain about it. His friends literally fight alongside him when he was just basically screwing them over. They cheer him on. They repeatedly say that Scott will win these fights just because he's Scott, so of course he'll win. But that shouldn't be enough to make us like him. Especially when he seems to be playing life on easy. Like, oh my god, this guy's life is too easy for him. It's been a year since he's had a job, and Wallace has paid for everything. Then he literally just starts going around asking friends, like, can I work with you? Can I get a job at your place? And that works, even though he didn't show up with a resume or anything. His ex-girlfriend happens to be a rock star. When he loses one apartment, he gets to move in with Ramona, his girlfriend. And when he loses that apartment, his parents get him a new apartment. He courts Ramona by ordering CDs, knowing that she will have to deliver them because she's a delivery girl, and then he refuses to sign the package until she agrees to date him. Which, in case anyone out there doesn't know, that is a shitty thing to do. That is not acceptable. And so, like, objectively, I should hate Scott. But I didn't. I was rooting for him to win. And I think a major part of that is because the comics are very upfront with the fact that Scott is terrible. Everyone says it. Scott says it. And by the end, he seems to be actively trying to get better. He's trying to improve himself. And humans do really love redemption arcs. But it also might have something to do with the dorky, geeky, sincere dialogue of these books. It's very meta, it's very silly, it's very nerdy, and that's the sort of thing that people either absolutely love or absolutely hate. And I'm one of those people that absolutely love. If you give me a sitcom in Buffy speak, I will watch every second of it. But, of course, there's one major aspect of these books I have not discussed as of yet. The world. And I will admit, I was a bit surprised reading them, because having watched the movies, I sort of knew what to expect. And it wasn't quite that, because these comics start out really realistic. Like, for the first, I would say half of the first volume, nothing in them really hint at magical realism or sci-fi or anything like that. But and the first big thing is Ramona. When she appears skating through Scott's dream, and she explains that she's using subspace in his head to make her deliveries, it's treated as like, oh, that's weird, that's unusual, that makes no sense. So it sort of sets up this weird shift of like, okay, there are sci-fi things here, but not everybody knows about them. But no, it turns out as we move on, no, everyone knows about them, it's just that one particular element was unknown. And it's a gradual buildup of like little bits of these video game-esque world building structures are put in place, book after book after book, until finally by the end we have, yes, subspace, we have glowing heads, we've got ninjas, we've got people dying and coins appearing out of nowhere, we've got magical psychic abilities, like, we've got a lot going on by the end. But it's a gradual build-up. But other than with Ramona's evil exes, none of this stuff really directly affects the plot that much. And yeah, fighting the evil exes is not that big of a part of the plot. It's often treated as more like a background chore, while the actual plot revolves around Scott getting his shit together, getting an apartment, and trying to deal with his emotional baggage. The fights are just sort of not at all subtle metaphors for Scott showing he's finally willing to make an effort for something he wants, then for learning to accept the parts of Ramona that aren't perfect, and then for trying to be better than the shitty people Ramona has dated in the past. And of course, I can't not talk about Gideon, because he is the major sort of antagonist of the series. Most of the evil exes honestly seem less evil and more just exes. Most of these were not people who hurt Ramona in the past. They're people Ramona hurt. They almost all were slighted by her in some way. Ramona dumped them unceremoniously, cheated on them, or just used them. But Gideon, on the other hand? Yeah, he's the shittiest of a pile of shitty characters in this book. He literally keeps his exes as objects cryogenically frozen and has invaded Ramona's head. He has found a way to weaponize guilt and doubt and possibly did experiments on Ramona, and it's implied he might be part of the reason that Scott can't remember large portions of his high school years / misremember his high school years. And I do think it's very pertinent that when we finally do meet the main villain, he is someone who wants to keep Ramona as an object, and it takes both Scott and Ramona fighting together to take him down. The final victory is both of theirs, instead of just Scott's. I think it was the author's direct attempt to subvert the notion that this series was about a geeky boy winning a girl-shaped trophy. Now, here's the thing. There are still some seriously problematic moments in these comic books. There's a word used a lot in especially the first couple of books that I'm pretty sure was already counted as a slur back in 2004 when the first book was published. It's the R word. Also having Knives' father, who is Chinese, completely lose his mind when he finds out that she's dating a white guy and decide to become a vengeance-driven ninja. I mean, it was a choice. Not sure it's a good one, but it's a choice. And I love the character of Wallace. He's great. But the fact that he is consistently referred to as just the gay roommate, not the best. And then you add in the fact that Scott clearly fetishizes lesbians, and when another character comes out, not everyone is super chill about it. It doesn't paint a really good picture. But considering some of the other shit that comes out of geek culture, this isn't that bad. So yeah, I'd say overall, Scott Pilgrim books, there are reasons some people do not like them. And if you are not into, like, geeky, like, meta, clearly referential comic books, you probably will not like these. But if you enjoy stories of shitty people learning to be less shit, these are really fun.